What is up? Happy Sunday to all my people everywhere in the world. Sorry, I'm a bit tired today. So I'm just a little loopy. Speaking of loopy, I wanted to break down a song that I just released after quite some time. It's from the upcoming Zero Tep album. Kind of. She moved some stuff in and then she's got to go to work. Speaking of which, I don't know when she's gonna get home. I don't really want to get her on camera, but whatever. Yeah, so more of that later. I'm just so tired. We'll see how long I can go. I definitely want to play some Dwarf Fortress just for myself, so I don't mind streaming it because I also want to record it. But yeah, I definitely want to do this Inkareen stuff. I don't know if it'll be a complete breakdown or anything like that, just because it is kind of a complex track mixing wise, and I might not hit everything, so I might have to go back and record some of it again for another video. Speaking of which, I haven't had any time to edit anything or put things up on YouTube, so it's been a bit just a lot going on. Plus I've been playing some like Dwarf Fortress late at night, so that doesn't really help. Alright, well let's get into it. Turn off this music. We were making some of that on stream the other day. Alright, so Inkareen is kind of interesting. I guess I should play the album master, because the master kind of changes the tone of the track somewhat significantly. And I just want you to get a feel for what it sounds like. The intro won't sound all that much different, but when you get into the drop, it will sound different. I'll play you both side by side here in a second. Oops. So this is the break. It kind of breaks down again, comes back. This is microtonal, by the way. Kind of an intense song. So this is the first part. Some pads. Alright, once the drop wraps up, kind of comes in for some quiet stuff with just the pads again. There's this break. Which is like almost mono. Kind of just like builds up until the next drop. definitely a loud one. Alright, well, so that's what Inkareen sounds like, the mastered version. I just showed you that, and I didn't like go through it because it sounds significantly different. So this is what it sounds like when we actually like listen to the track. This is what it sounds like leading up to the drop. This is unmastered, by the way. You notice that like things definitely sound a bit different in terms of like gain staging. And a lot of that is due to the master, and that's something that I'll go through a little bit later. There is some kind of like complex. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump this. There is some kind of complex mixing going on in here. You'll notice that pretty much the entire track is like grouped up, and that's to process this down here at the end, in the break before the second drop. So I guess let's sort of start at the beginning. The very first thing that you hear is this ARP that goes through the entire track, and the kind of like curious thing about this track is that it's composed in 19 Edo. And what that means is, so normal conventional music has 12 steps to an octave. It's called 12 Edo. And this track has 19. So there's kind of like having, you know how A flat, A flat and G sharp are the same thing in traditional Western music. In 19 Edo, A flat and G sharp are two different notes, essentially. So I use a synthesizer called Surge to do this, and this is actually an entirely free synthesizer, and it looks a bit complicated, but it just has like sort of everything here on its face, kind of a very efficient interface. So I can break this synth down. It's kind of simple, I guess, when you get into it. Let me take a look at it again and kind of like reorient myself to how the synth works. So we've got one oscillator, essentially. This sort of like modified like square saw. And the way that Surge retunes itself, you can actually open up, there's a tuning library here, the factory tuning library, and inside of it, there's all these scales. And so these are, so what this is the ED219, and I believe what that means is, I forget what the ED2 means. You know, if I was more awake, I would definitely be more on it. Just forget about it for the time being. But all of these are different steps within the octave. I believe that means maybe that the octave is double, and here like the octave is maybe triple. Not entirely sure. So ED212 would be typical standard Western tuning, and then ED19 is what we're hearing. I believe I can open up these Scala files and show you what the actual pitch divisions are. So equal division of the harmonic. Oh, okay. Harmonic 2, of course, yeah. Into 19 parts. So 2 to 1. And yeah. So it kind of maps a little bit onto traditional Western music in the way that the math sort of works. So I get away with using some 12 Edo stuff and some 19 Edo stuff in this song. So let me take a quick look at everything that's happening here, because there is a very, very large chain of things. You know what I think I'm gonna do? I'm actually just gonna like group all this up and turn it off for the time being and see what the synth just sounds like on its own. So something is oscillating. There's an LFO here that is oscillating. I believe this is the sync rate here being oscillated. Something's changing. You can see that the cutoff there is being automated. There's probably a lot in this track that's being automated that I could here, let me move this off screen for a second and break out all of this automation here. So this is the oscillator sync is being automated when you get down there. The cutoff is of course being automated. We saw that happening. Let's see what else. The envelope mod on the filter, excuse me, and the resonance mod of the filter as well. And that's everything that's being automated just for surge. So you're gonna see like the filter envelope modulation come up, right? And that is here? Yes, right here. So that's how much this affects this filter. So every time that the key is pressed, which is happening because of this arpeggiator, which I guess I should also speak to. You can see this. You can see the oscillator sync rate changing the shape of the waveform to give it some more overtones. So yeah, I should speak to what's happening here in the oscillator. So this oscillator is affecting the shape of the synth as well. So, excuse me, oh my god, I'm so tired. Arpeggiator, not oscillator. Sorry, kill me. I'm just gonna confuse the shit out of anybody that tunes in. So this arpeggiator is basically I'm holding down the notes that make up the chord, and it's going through them at in an upward style on the 16th notes, and the gate tells me how long each of those notes last for. And on top of that, I also have control over the number of steps that is taking place in addition to that, in addition to what's being played. And there are places where I'm adjusting that. So here, it's actually going up an octave when I hold the notes down for longer. And you're hearing that. So it repeats. Once it runs through the cycle, it repeats and it goes up. In this case, just 1. And here, 4. And you can see that the MIDI is not even changing. So it all has to do with that. And all of this is without any of the effects that are here. Which there's not a lot. This trash is helping give it a lot of bite. That's for sure. Essentially, it looks like some sign shaping with a little bit of fuzz on top, which is helping give it a lot of that muscle. Turn it off. A lot more muscle. Alright, so let me go back into Surge here and see what else is happening in this synth. Sometimes it's a little bit hard for me to visualize, especially with something like this where there's stuff kind of held hidden behind the scenes. Stuff might not be super obvious when I'm looking at it. Yeah, there is no frequency modulation at all. Honestly, it looks like somewhat classic Zero Tep, to be honest with you. There is some automation and stuff happening, but it's like more or less. Oh, the velocity affects the cutoff somewhat, it looks like, but I don't know if there's really that much velocity changing going on. Yeah. Not that I'm doing anything with the mod wheel really either. Yeah, this is actually quite simple when it comes to like this kind of mimics what I do in a lot of other things where you just hear arps going. It just really is just like the oscillator itself, with a lot of effects on top of it. So in this case, you've got so the sync of the oscillator is kind of adding overtones. You can hear it there. You've also got some automation going on like the chorus. So when you get into, you can hear the chorus increasing, stereo width. And as I talked about previously, the chorus in Ableton has a couple of different modes. You can actually modulate the second delay time, or you can fix it so that it doesn't really move around as much. In the stereo image, which is what I'm doing here. And there's a little bit of feedback, but the polarity is negative. So it shouldn't really... It's just adding like a little bit of some of those like weird screechy movements in the oscillator. Let's see what else there is. The echo effect. There's definitely... Man, I wish that I would have like recorded myself making this, because it is hard to explain some of what's going on in the automation here. So in the beginning you can hear some of this echo effect, which is pre-trash, so it kind of helps. It also gets affected by the distortion that's happening afterwards in the compression. Speaking of which, there is quite a lot of compression, which I feel like helps give, yeah, I know it is a bit complex. This compression helps give every sort of attack, every new note, just a little bit of kick. Whereas this distortion here has kind of flattened it just a little bit. So here comes a little bit more distortion from the pedal. The EQ just came on as well to help reduce some of that low end. And that is because there is actually a second surge running underneath it to handle the sub bass. And this is, the gain on this one is being automated manually. So it doesn't exist at all here in the beginning. So all you're hearing is just that other synth. And I've left the bass in there. And then suddenly it joins in, and this is the sub. So without it, you're just hearing And with it, you get... You can hear that lower tone. You can hear it especially when he comes in here. Alright, you know, I ought to turn the sidechain off. Actually. So without that, it's just... And that's just doubling everything that's going on. I think 2 octaves down, 1 octave down. 2 octaves, I'm pretty sure. Also in 19 Ito, of course. Otherwise it wouldn't be able to play the same notes. So yeah, there is quite a lot of automation. I feel like it is going to be hard to kind of to be able to grab it all. Can you hear this filter in the break? Slowly moving up. A little bit of reverb in this section. Can hear it. Kind of helps it make it sound a bit bigger, along with this weird zither-like thing in the background. And it actually increases in size, so watch the decay time here and the reverb and the dry wet. Both getting larger and larger as you get into the drop. Yeah. I honestly don't even know where like this filter is. Oh, this is just in the beginning, okay. So sometimes I do things just for color. And in this case, I cut off the high end of the synth a little bit and kind of worked on increasing the resonance and decreasing the resonance just to get it to sound a little bit more lifelike, just for some color in the beginning. And I guess I must use it at the end as well, because I also turned it on. Yeah. But it goes off as soon as the drums come in. It's very interesting. It's I had a lot of fun making this, and this is a lot more automation that I usually feature. Mostly just because it's an ARP that has to be controlled somewhat separately. I hope you can hear me okay, by the way. I hope it's not too loud. So yeah, let me dig in here a little bit more and see what I've done. Yeah, this pedal here is really adding like a lot of color to the sound, as you can hear. It's kind of what makes that like chorus sort of like fray the sound. It's just like an extra layer of fuzz. So like suddenly yanking away like a reverb or something definitely makes something sound a lot more close and a lot more intimate. It kind of increases the violence, the perceived violence of your mix, which is always a good thing if you're going for something that sounds like this. So I'm going to guess that the arpeggiator here mimics the one that is up here. I probably just copied and pasted. Because right now in Ableton you can't like route that kind, you can't do that kind of thing. They need to be separate. So the bass mimics the main arp, of course, and it basically just adds like this sort of sub layer underneath. I think this synth is just, I think I just cut off the attack in the high end mostly. Oh yeah, sorry, I turned the sidechain off and then accidentally turned it back on, so I wasn't looking. So when it's running into the pedal, it's just basically the sub. A little bit of sine folding just to kind of, if you turn this up, you can kind of hear what it does to the sound. So I just added a little bit on top so that when it actually like really clips it, it just sort of adds a little bit of harmonics on the high end. And then of course the gain here is automated. So over time I can kind of like increase the punch that's coming in from the sub. I'm going to turn it down a little bit because I think it might be a bit loud. Just a touch. All right. Come on, go where I want you. Okay, there we go. All right, so man, there is a lot that's happening. But the bass gets separated at some point from it, so it doesn't become part of the synth, so that I can kind of like process them separately, and keep the sub bass here just sort of monoed in the middle. I think that's pretty important to the sound of the track. So going down before we even get into like any of the drums or anything, let's look at this. This, I think, was a preset that I kind of worked with. I can't imagine much has changed. There's a little bit of like velocity randomization here. I honestly wouldn't know what I've done to this if I did change it. Maybe just like elongated the release times here on the filters or something like that. But mostly what I did is boost up that high end and get it to sound a little bit more stringy and sitar-y, partially by running it through this amp. I guess it is more sitar than zither, but so just some heavy amounts of compression to get it to kind of like sit in one layer. And it just kind of like textural in the background. I was thinking that maybe I wanted more, something like more heavy pads in that part, but then when I just used this, I thought that it was nice. It was like as, I don't know, thin as it needs to be. So let's look here. Let's maybe, I really don't want to get into any of this stuff quite yet. Let's maybe look at the drums, because the drums are less complex. So that synth goes throughout. It's the main synth of the song. And it doesn't really change much from that, just that ARP with the sort of like distortion and sort of like stereo affectation and depth and stuff like that. So the drums also go throughout. Ugh, kill me. Ugh. Can't believe I'm this tired already. I'm gonna re-enable all the automation actually. So this is actually adapted from a kit that is part of some Ableton pack that I'm not honestly not 100% sure of. But whatever it's called, the Piccadilly kit. And then I added, you can see I added some of my own effects in there, or my own samples. Let's turn off some of this processing so that you can hear what it sounds like when it's just dry. I liked it because it was kind of a good sounding kick, and I knew that if I gave it some compression and so yeah, kick, regular snare, this snare that I never use. The clap is the nicest, honestly. Like the way that sounds is excellent. It hits all the right notes. It's kind of like juicy kick. Don't know how much of this I use, to be honest. I don't think I used that. Maybe. Definitely used that. Don't remember using that. Maybe I did. Yeah, and then the cymbal that's more of like a hi-hat anyway. Okay. So when we open up the effects, the first thing that I did was I added a little bit of reverb on it. Just like room reverb. So you can kind of hear that if I turn it up especially, you can hear that. That's what that reverb sounds like. Oh, that's what that reverb sounds like wet. And it is quite wet. And I kind of wanted to like drive it up and increase the stereo interest by adding some more distortion on it. So here comes the distortion. First some overdrive, which gives a lot of like mid-range cohesion. The saturator adds a little bit more on the high end again, while also, you know, serving to like compress the sound a lot more. In fact, I decided that maybe it was a little bit too much, so I added a little bit more compression just to help like bring out the attack. And it's quite a long attack time here, so it's very slow to react. Just anything that's like really going for too long, it helps cut back on. And that's the same kit that you can find down here. I just actually push it a bit more with the limiter here and the master changes as well. You can hear that this like tambourine kind of like playing really fast. And now there's a shaker loop that's just kind of like sits sort of in the background. It's a bit hard to hear because I filtered it out. But yeah, it's quite heavily filtered, but it kind of helps add to the mid-range with those tams. Here's a trick that I've talked about doing before. Automating the frequency of the sine erosion to kind of change how the sound morphs over time. very subtle here in the song, just to make it sound a little bit more alive. You know, it means a lot to me that these sounds actually do sound alive, and they don't just sound like the same kick or snare, you know, like a bunch of times in a row, like, or they don't sound plastic or wooden. Speaking of making things sound kind of alive, these intro drums use a tactic that I've actually talked about before, something called drum pulse, where you actually embed impulse within a drum rack. And now impulse is itself a sampler, but each of these different pads can have different settings. So it's a little bit more like an old school hardware sampler, rather than the drum rack, which is sort of like Ableton's response to that, where you can just have everything open. This is like it's made for like one shots and drums and stuff like that. So you'll notice that each of these actually has the exact same kick in it, but they're all slightly different. Like they all have slightly different random pitch mods, or different transposition times, or different decay times, or like different velocity mods. And that's because every time I hit this kick, it's just going to be slightly different. In this, it's not very noticeable, but in other projects that I've done it's a very noticeable effect. So it just makes it sound a little bit more alive. Tiny little fluctuations. And so there is also here, out of this sidechain group, along with the rest of the drums, this fuck up 808 kick, I call it, which is just this ripper of a kick that comes through and sidechains everything else around it, basically. Everything in the track. Not all the way, but almost all the way. And this is made from, I mean, it should be fairly obvious. It's just like some distorted bass. 808. That's the bass sample. And then on top of it, there is some trash with some extremely messed up acid fuzz distortion that matches what's in a typical like acid unit. And yeah, some like slightly wet, really bad, just some really bad distortion that causes a lot of that high-end clipping that you hear. And then on top of that, there's some sort of like light convolution happening to put it like within sort of like a rubber cone, which kind of also helps add interest to the mid-range. And then on top of that, some more compression, multi-band compression. You can see it's bringing up the highs as they start to taper off and reducing some of the mids and the lows. And then there's this big old kick, which helps trigger it. Clever use of sidechain all over this track to make things kind of sound like they're coming in and out and hitting you really hard. Quite long. You'll notice that these sidechain release times are really long. Honestly, they're really quick for the 808 one because it needs to come back immediately. But these other ones, they take a long time to recover. This one here is coming from these effects. 422 milliseconds is like half a second. That's quite a long time. And that's from these in the intro, which makes sense. Slightly a little bit longer in the intro to kind of like make it. Yo, Jacob 22, what's up? You make the best music. I love you. Like, actually love you. Ooh woo. Yeah, so a lot of sidechain all over this track. Really clever stuff going on, if I do say so myself. Yo, what's up? Hope you're doing well. So let me see here. What else do we need to get into? Yeah, so the drums are somewhat simple. Just like a little bit of reverb, a lot of distortion, to make them like really like crack and come through, and then this compressor is just adding like a little bit of attack back into it, which is always been nice. So that really is like, that's like the bones of the track. This synth that runs the entire time, which gets sort of doubled by this sub down here. By the way, questions and stuff are welcome. And if there's like another track that you want to go over, we can go over that too. Just throwing it out there, no obligation. So yeah, let me see. Let me collect myself just a second and see what else I've got going on in the track. Let's go through some of these intro effects while I'm sort of looking at it. These were added a little bit later. It's just sort of like me breathing into the microphone for part of it. I think I did a little bit of frequency shifting on it, which kind of makes it sound like maybe a slightly different voice. Nothing crazy there, just some filtering as well to get it to sound sort of mid-rangey, and then obviously some like really long reverb. I don't even think, I guess this is on, so it just kind of makes it sort of stereo. Nothing super special here. Just me breathing into a mic. Let me see. This intro riser here. So this comes from some effects. And I don't... Yeah, okay. So this... Yeah, no worries, of course. The VOD will be up. I'm actually gonna... I'll edit the highlight down, and I'll cut out the intro and everything. And then maybe someday, if I actually get the discipline, I'll edit this and put it on my YouTube channel at some point. We'll see. I'm a bit tired, so I'm saying a lot of words incorrectly today. So we'll see. So this intro riser, there's a bit of this effect here, which I think is just a straight tone, maybe, if I remember right. Oh no, not a straight tone, but I did do some transposition on it to make it sort of increase in pitch over time. And then there's a little bit of erosion to give it some high end sort of like weirdness. Not really gonna notice that much. It's just something that I would do to kind of like diffuse it a little bit. Thin crash, kind of layering in the background to announce the introduction of the drums. Not gonna notice it that much, especially because like that hi-hat is sort of sitting up on top of it. Atiaz come back in. So these effects here are a little bit special because they took me a little bit of time to render. I messed with this program, who's this from? Glitch Machines, called Fracture, which is it's messy for sure. I guess I'll play you a little bit of it. So I found these, which I think are just like part of maybe some like, I don't even know, some sample pack somewhere, like maybe like some Richard Devine samples or something. And I ran them multiple times through Fracture. I literally have no idea if you'll be able to like... I honestly don't even know if this is the... I don't know if this is the settings that I used either. But what came out the other end was edited down to these few sounds. Is what's important. This one right here that you hear, and this one. My guess is that I ran them through multiple times and then stopped when I found the one that when I got it to sound like I wanted. Sometimes the process of making these kinds of effects is somewhat messy, so it can be hard to explain. Here I've just used a little bit of like sine folding to like just make sure that nothing clips. It turns that clipping into harmonics. Not really a big deal. Some EQ here to kind of help shape the sound. You can see this EQ sort of like moving around, which kind of adds a little bit of interest in certain sections. I wouldn't say it's crazy. Most of it comes down to how that sound is. And then I guess a little bit of sonic enhancement in the low end to get it to round out, which is kind of also getting tacked on a bit here. There's a little bit extra compression, which is really adding quite a lot to the high end as it tapers off there. You'll notice. That reverb being, or that delay being somewhat louder. Sometimes you just need those weird effects. And you use some very idiosyncratic methods to get them. So I'm noticing it down here as well, and I'm not sure... Okay. I'll have to look at that. I'm assuming that what this is... you know what this is? So I made changes to this is what happened. This is how I rendered this section out, which is a recording of the drop that's about to happen as run through this fracture effect. We'll get into that in a second. I guess I should just go through it now, more or less. So this is what the drop down here sounds like. Unmastered, so the master actually is, again, it's somewhat idiosyncratic and adds probably a little bit more than it should. So you can hear that Reese in there with the drums. Pretty sure that this is all of that recorded out into a track in Ableton and then run through that. Because you can hear that glitching and stuff. So like using those FX re-renders and rendering out parts of your songs and like sampling yourself again can be kind of a cool way of sort of like being self-referential and generating more content for your song. And in this case, I did a lot of the same things. There's a little bit of like weird stereo separation that happens down here. But mostly it's the same. just a little bit of EQ, a little bit of sonic enhancement, and then quite a lot of compression to make the whole thing sound like a flat little pancake. Because a lot of the in electronic music especially, like that compression can really bring out like really aggressive compression. Yeah, no problem. Of course. Hope you guys have a good night. Probably still be playing some Dwarf Fortress later until I like fall asleep. So if you want to come by and watch some goblins eat shit, then no, we haven't yet. I have yet to get to the Reese. And actually might need to use the restroom before I do that. So would you give me like 45 seconds and I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Yeah, no worries if you guys got to go out. This you know, the VOD will already be up more or less, like you can go back and check out the beginning on the channel. And all the highlights should be around forever, hopefully. So I'll post it on Twitter afterwards, I promise. So yeah, I've gone through the drums. I've gone through like the main. Yeah, of course, no problem at all. I do want to do more of these and try to be a little bit more cognizant of questions and what I'm leaving out. I used to write these. I used to do these breakdowns for like videos and kind of like write down everything and have a curriculum, but I always forget things. So it's like it's just the returns are diminishing. I sense that I'll have to answer a lot of questions, regardless. So yeah, so we've kind of been through the drums. We've kind of been through the main synth. Opened up Surge and kind of took a look at what that. I haven't gone into this in depth at all because this is a very complex synthesizer, amazing synthesizer. But more or less, this main arp and the sub that kind of run underneath it are as they sound. Plucky little things with just some effects on top, more or less. So I guess we can now, having gone through like the drums and stuff, more or less, we can sort of dig into the Reese. Now the Reese itself is going to be a little disappointing to you because it's actually sampled from one of Anti-Negative's Reeses. There is a Reese that I had made for the track, but I ditched it because it was just garbage compared to how much this little like 5-second sample ripped. So I exploited that somewhat, and so up here, did I have it? Oh no, I deleted it originally because I think I just used the sample. So here's what the sample. I know They are non-binary as well, if I remember right, for what that's worth. They've created some insane... I wanted to make it. I spent a long time. Actually, one of the things that inspired this track was like watching their production streams and just being like I can absolutely do this, and then like sitting down and like trying to do that. No worries. It is a lot getting used to somebody's gender sometimes. Yeah, it's always inspiring. They do some crazy shit. So yeah, I felt a bit bad, but I was like, this honestly just rips. Like I couldn't do as good myself. And one of the interesting things about it is, of course, like they're moving around. It's not a perfect sample. It's not, you know, like maybe the pitch might not even be right. Like it moves, so it's got idiosyncrasies within itself. And just like I would be jamming on like a Reese that I was making, you know, like I just picked a part that sounded incredible, and part of the constraint of working with this sample then became you know, like I can only use it for a certain amount of time, otherwise like it moves on to another note and stuff like that. So yeah, it dictates how the composition goes. So here is just the raw sample as it's being played, and it rips. Actually, let's get rid of this. Let's get all this sidechain needs to go away for the time being. It's a ripper for sure. Like it's a great sounding Reese. And then on top of that, I added in some so I added some trash, of course. In this case, the what's it look like? We've got a filter here. Nothing is happening. I guess it's just on. We got a little bit of fuzz distortion. I guess just to sort of like glue it all together. And then some helmet convolution to give it that weird stereo interest. Then absolutely compress the shit out of it, which kind of helps bring out that high end and kind of lock that mid-range into place. And then some R-bass to kind of help bring the sub back. Which it really does. Like, this is one of those that I was worried like maybe it wouldn't be clean enough to reconstitute the sub like that, like literally adding water to it to like reconstitute it, but it worked better than I thought. And considering it's kind of hovering around those frequencies. Yeah, R-bass is really incredible. They have two plugins for like reconstituting bass. R-bass is for reconstituting the sub from higher frequencies, and max bass is for adding harmonics from sub frequencies, and both can be used to do that. I think they're two of the most like useful ones that they make. Vitamin is probably the most useful though. Like it has elements of, I'm pretty sure, like the R-bass. It has elements, I think, of a lot of their algorithms in it, and it's really incredible. Yeah. And that's it. That's all this Reese is. And so when you come down to like that's the screech. The screech is just the sample playing very fast. And I think maybe even moving notes. Which is the reason why it seems to like go up and down just a little bit. So I do swoop into it with the glide. And there is a little bit of a dip. But the reason that it sounds like it is because I'm sampling it, and what happens is he goes up in the sample as well. So it just like it's like a double screech happening at once. Oh god, I just misgendered them as well. Oh my god. We need to get educated, son. It is a little bit of this is what my tired dumbass brain does. Cancel me. Cancel me. So it does sound good, and it's fucking loud, dude. It like the mastering on this is so idiosyncratic. I can't even like emphasize that enough, because not only is there like some very heavy compression going on, you know, within like each of these things, but there's also quite literally like some multiband upward compression going on the master itself, and that really helps control, like it helps juggle, I think, some of like the violence between like the bass and the drums, because they're competing in this compressor here in the master. And then of course with all this sidechain and stuff. And I was talking about how the sidechain in this earlier, how the sidechain in this is extremely aggressive and quite long on the release time. Like longer than I would normally recommend people do. Like it takes a long time to recover, and that I think that just helps like give life, because this is sidechained to the whole kit. This is not just sidechained to like the kick or the snare or anything like that. It is sidechained to the entire kit. So everything, like even the hi-hat when it comes through. It's exactly it. Yeah, this is distortion. This is the sound of like shit getting pushed to its edge. And like the unmastered version actually like you'll notice that I have a limiter. I keep pointing at the screen like an idiot. You'll notice I have a limiter at the end here, because when that sub comes up, it actually clips. And I didn't want it to clip the my OBS. I don't even know if it'll do that. It might be floating point, so who knows. Didn't want to risk it though. There is a little bit more. There is like a different Reese thing going on here in this little break, which I added this a little bit later because I didn't. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. And I try to master, like, fairly cognizant of that, like when how things happen in the gain staging and how they're going to happen in the mastering process, so that when, you know, something like that comes along, it can cut out everything. Or like I was explaining earlier, the entire mix is sidechained to this kick right here. So when that when that comes along, it just cuts everything, literally everything else out. It creates a really impressive effect. Like you can do a lot with just like just aggressive, just incredibly aggressive mixing techniques in electronic music, and usually get rewarded for them. So yeah, the Reese. I mean, I if you've watched Anti-Negative create any of their do any of their Reese streams or their sound design streams, like you can imagine how much has like gone into this, and I'm just ripping, you know, like an 8-second sample. So you can definitely do this based on your own sound design. The only reason I didn't is because it didn't sound as good, and I tried for like an hour and a half. So I was like, just use the sample. It's damn good, and it's there for you, baby. But yeah, it is. There's a couple other times. There's actually a Reese that I got. I think maybe like 2 weeks after working on this that I was like very satisfied, and I was like, I should definitely exactly. I was like, I should definitely record this for later, and then I never did. So I should go back and I should mess with that one. So let's see what else is here, huh? So some of this, like I said, some of this is in 19 Edo. Like the track itself is in 19 Edo, but you'll notice that this Reese is just done with Ableton Sampler in 12 Edo. That's because the scales actually map onto each other somewhat ambiguously. 19 Edo is actually something that you can compose almost side by side in 12 Edo with, and thankfully the sort of like atonal nature of what I'm doing, sort of atonal, allows me to kind of get away with it a little bit more. I am really stretching these chords out. The pad here gives away what the actual key is, though, and I haven't broken down this pad yet. So where for the Reese? The Reese is going. That's a good question, actually, because I just kind of did it by ear. So that is a C to a C, and then just a half step, which in 19 Edo would be just slightly less than 2 jumps. So in 19 Edo, you'd be going up to like 113 cents, whereas in 12 Edo, it'd basically be a 100-cent jump, which is why it works okay and why it sounds okay. But yeah, it is pretty much just octaves and half steps. So yeah, really nothing crazy. Like I have exploited how it sounds, and there are times when it works, and there are times when it really doesn't work. With 12 Edo, it really depends on the key, and it's not something that I don't know enough about Zen harmonic music theory to be able to tell you why it works necessarily. I just you know, it is known, Daenerys, it is known. This is also that sample. Let me see if I've really done anything with the Reese. I don't really think I have. I've made it mono, of course, so that I can glide between the notes. There is some pitch envelope on it, so when you can hear that there, and you can hear it, you know, here. Well, you could hear it if it wasn't getting covered up by a sidechain. But yeah, just like a little bit of pitch down into the note, which of course makes it sound even more like a Reese. And then I guess there's a little bit of filtering. It doesn't really look like it's doing anything. I don't know if I just maybe turned it off. Maybe I automated. No, it's not automated at all. I don't see anything. It doesn't look like it's doing anything at all. Yeah, pretty much just the sample. So yeah, let's look at this pad really quick. So this pad, I know for a fact, partially comes from a preset, but I did adapt it somewhat. So this is also 19 Edo. And I think you're looking at, was it 2 oscillators? This one is almost down all the way. They're not modulating each other. So yeah, I guess it is just this weird, oops. Oh my God, stop clicking. Let me turn the sidechain off here too. I guess that's sitting way in the background, almost inaudibly. Yeah, I honestly don't think that I've done that much to this. Little bit sort of extended amp times. Yeah, definitely. Like you can sort of theorize on the basis of intervals and stuff like that, but it becomes harder when you're talking about like when you're dealing with that when you've got like, you know, the exact interval in between notes is 49.72 cents, you know. It's like, okay, great, yeah. Like you're not gonna be able to like, nothing's gonna be like justly intoned. I gotta kind of look, because it takes me a little bit of time to like break down what's like kind of going on in all of these, like in these presets. There's usually stuff kind of happening underneath that is sort of hard to notice. A little bit of like mod from the LFO on the pitch there, you can see. Very slow modulation though. 0.2 hertz, 0.3 hertz. Same here. It's increasing over time, so there's a few seconds of attack time on it, and I don't know what else it's modulating. Looks like that might be it. So a little bit of pitch drift coming from the LFO, which we can definitely hear. Probably, I would guess that pitch shifting is probably the bulk of what you're hearing, because you can kind of hear it if I turn this, it's there right away, and then couldn't tell you if I added that or if that's part of the pad. I'm gonna guess maybe it's part of the pad. And yeah, it's just basically running off of this wavetable here. That's what it sounds like when you open it up. No, it doesn't really. It sounds natural. It sounds like somebody's voice, because it comes off as a pure tone first, and then there's a little bit of warble as it goes on. It's not very noticeable. It sounds like a natural instrument, you know. And then on top of that, I did a little bit of EQ boosting on the high end. And then there's, I'm gonna guess just only convolution here. Yeah, a little bit of convolution just to make it sound, well, I guess it's a lot, it's 100%. And then some dynamics, which is also not doing that much. Yeah, it does kind of. That's why I really like microtonal composition. There's a lot that you can do with it. Certainly, it aids in, you know, certain intonations aid in making things sound spooky, which is partially why I used it. You know, it just does sound alien to your ear. But there's just so many more. There's so many more chords and intonations. Like I've found myself like just singing, like improvising to Inkareen, to like this song, just because it's like it actually is rooted in some like the theory of 19 Edo. Like I spent a long time like playing these chords and making sure that this is what I wanted to do, and that I could do it within 12 Edo, and that like it would sound okay. because it's not entirely random, even though it totally could be. 19edo is very easy to play in. Like, if you get the chance, install Surge. Here's how you make things microtonal. You go to the menu, you go to the tuning section, and there's actually a factory tuning library. And all of these ones that say ED2 are equal divisions of the second harmonic. So this is the one that you want, ED219, and you literally drag and drop it onto this tuning part here. My computer is just very slow in doing that, but yeah, drag and drop. Bam, retuned, and you can just play it on your keyboard. It's amazing. So yeah, there's, I guess on this pad, looks like there's a little bit of chorus on it over here in the effects section. Goes out to some delay and reverb. I guess we can also remove that and hear what it sounds like too. Just see what it sounds like underneath. I guess the reverb. Here, you can actually hear the warble a little bit more now that I've removed the reverb. God, that is nice. That is a pretty nice sounding reverb, isn't it? God, I love the Surge stuff. It helps. And then there's an octave below it down here, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, just a different synth, I guess. With this really like ugly chorus from Molecular. Which is just basically like messing with the delay times to make it sound really smeared. Then I used the Surge to kind of like make a theremin like effect for this little bit. So, kind of chilling. Kind of chilling. So turn all this crap back on. So, yeah. Yeah, just a little bit. Wait, what do you do with your all pass filter? So this is the breakdown here. So I was saying earlier that this is, oh, word. Yeah. So this is basically a render of the drop that's about to, oh, excuse me, the drop that's about to come through this, through Fracture here. Which is cool. I just took it and chopped it up. Waiting for it to capture some of this audio. So taking some of that and then like making it into that, sort of chopping it up. There's some weird delay on it in this section here to make it go stereo. Definitely, I love Glitch Machine stuff. There's a little bit of saturation to kind of make it just a little bit of like sign folding in case it clips in any parts. A little bit of EQing to make it sound sort of weird and idiosyncratic. A little bit of bottom end warmth to get it to kind of like cohere, and then quite a lot of compression. And then on top of that, I got some toms. It says snare, but that's just because it's rendered out of XO, which is a really great sample organization plugin. So a little bit of that, a little bit of dub stuff. These big toms here in this part come from Damage, I believe. Really incredible Native Instruments pack. And then I used, I gave it just a little bit of stereo width. Using something that I've created just to do that really quick tool. And then cut out just a little bit of the mids, because I thought they were a bit overwhelming. There's this break here. So originally for this section I had like, yeah, Contact is great. I don't use it nearly enough. I could use it so much more. Ableton Sampler is good, but man, Contact is just, it's got all the features. So I originally had like an almond break in this section, which was like double timed. And I don't know, it was good. It was good. I mean, I can show it to you, I guess. This is the first version. So I had this. I just felt phoned into me. It's fine. It's just like I just wanted something that brought the energy down just a little bit, and also like sourced itself from the song, rather than just being like an almond break, you know. Yeah, it's more personality. Plus I already think that the drops themselves are they are double time. Like, even though they're half time, the way that you have to keep tempo with them is double time, because otherwise you're like, it's too like, it's just like very weird. But yeah, almond break is just, yeah, it's just, yeah. What I realized is that you should go from a track that has like an almond break into this song, or vice versa, because otherwise, like, that's what this is made for. Otherwise it's like, it is just too on the nose. So I've got, this is something that I recorded out as Surge and then resampled, which is just like a synth just doing that, basically, like playing it kind of like sort of like soloing on it, riffing on it like some like Middle Eastern instrument. And what I'm doing here with sampler is I am essentially, so let me remember what I'm doing here. So it's looping, and when you sustain, it's basically just going like running forward. And when you set the scale here, what I've done is I'm controlling where in the loop I'm playing with the pitch, with the MIDI pitch. So I'm essentially like playing a loop as I move up, but like all from this same sample. So I've set the key to control where the loop starts and where the sample is offset, and then I've set the pitch scale here to 0. And what that essentially means is that I can play different parts of the sample. Not that it's particularly important for this, but like it helps make it sound like, makes it sound kind of like weird and broken. Not sure why it goes up like a half step there. It could be part of the sample. I guess it must be. And that goes for yeah, this happens as the rest of the drop goes on, and I use a little bit of like auto pan to kind of like move it around the spectrum. Wondering where am I? Oh yeah, okay, here. That's why it's going up, because I'm adjusting the pitch. I guess I didn't really think about it being a different pitch in that section, but there we go. Now I remember. Then there's a little bit of erosion on that to sort of like, again, reconstitute the high end. Use that word again. Ugh, it's such a good sound. Play it over and over again. Yeah, this is something that I added a little bit later in the song as well, just for textural layers. Again, like lately, I've been focusing on making things somewhat quickly. So it was like a lot of this came, and then you can imagine that pretty much everything like here came later. But I think, I know you came a bit later, but I think I've run through pretty much everything that's happening in this track, minus some of this larger effect processing. So in this part, I actually turn on this effect rack here and process the entire track minus these two, the break chops here, this, and the big toms that we heard earlier from Contact. And what I'm doing is I'm essentially, the first thing that you're going to notice is you're going to notice the width goes down just a little bit here. It's getting automated. So it goes from like stereo. And just kind of like to make this part sort of like sink into its own channel. I'm adding some reverb on there. So without the reverb, and with the reverb, it kind of sounds like it's coming from within a room, you know? The pedal is adding a lot of grime on top, and a lot of cohesion. the EQ is kind of making it sound like maybe it's coming out of a unit. And then you saw that flicker on. It's just basically creating a lot of noise in a chain. Just some white noise. And then it's off, just for that section. The master itself, though, is like a little idiosyncratic. So you'll notice that the output here is automated. So in the beginning, the entire track is actually like 3 dB. Yeah, I almost always do like reverb into something, like to capture it with the original sound, you know, cohesion. So the entire track is literally 3 dB quieter outside of the drops. Which definitely helps like slam that bitch. So yeah, once it hits, it goes up 3 dB. And you'll notice that there is quite an extreme amount of compression happening. So this compressor here is shaping the tone of the entire track and helping give cohesion to like what sounds like, you know, a lot of different very aggressive effects. I don't normally do it as aggressively as I did on this track. And a lot of it, I normally wouldn't, I planned for this, basically. So I planned for this. I knew that I was eventually going to use some very aggressive compression on the master. So I definitely made, like, the drums hit a little bit heavier. You'll notice that here on this kit, I've used like a compressor that's got like 37 millisecond attack time on there. Like it's a long time for like drums to come through. That's the kind of like attack time that you would use on like a real drum kit in a real room with like real room reverb mixed into it, and not one that's like fake drums that have been constructed. And the reason I did that is because I knew that I would be using a slightly tighter attack time down here, and that these drums would then like really crush whatever was coming underneath them. In addition, these really long release times on these compressors, you don't hear them as much when you have this much compression happening on the top end. They're still there, but it ends up like the tail of the drums comes through more, and the reverb on the drums comes through more instead. Then there's some saturation. Mostly just a small little color layer affecting the transients. Not anything that you're gonna notice particularly much. The whole mix has a de-esser on it. So you'll notice, especially when that hi-hat comes through, that de-esser hits just right where it's pretty aggressive in a full mix. Just a little bit, just like needs like a little bit of control, and you know, that's because you're then going into even more excitation and compression on the master here, and you don't want that to be overwhelming. And now, like, one of the reasons that I did that is I really the mids here. Yeah, it's literally exactly what it is. It was like, yeah, I went too hard. I need to compensate now. One of the reasons that I knew that I wanted the upper mids here to really punch through. So that de-esser helps the snare still kick and like really like attack you when the whole mix gets punched up, but something like that hi-hat isn't going to. Kill me, that was a huge yawn, I'm sorry. That hi-hat isn't going to like really, you know, punish your ear. it is really funny. So there's a little bit of imaging, mostly to like make the highs and the low mids spread out just a little bit. And then of course some maximizing. A lot of transient emphasis, and not as much like stereo unlinking, because I really wanted the kick in the snare to drive the mix. But you'll notice by that time, most of the dynamics had been worked out of the mix anyway. So all I'm really doing is just giving some really like mainstream maximization on there. The bulk of the work is being done here with this compressor. Normally I wouldn't like I try to be a little bit more tame than this usually, but I will say, like, sometimes it just calls for it. Like, sometimes the mix just like it just needs all this shit on the master channel. And there's a lot of automation going on here, so it's been loved. Every sound has sort of like been labored over, and it's either glitchy because it's supposed to be like glitchy and rough, or I've intentionally worked it to be that, like these effects here that I've rendered out. Yeah, I think I've gone through just about everything that's here. I'm pretty sure we went over some stuff at the beginning. I talked about like this arpeggio here, which is kind of a long line of effects that mostly just comes down to like this plucky little, yeah, I don't know. I'm imagining probably just, I mean, when you have stuff that's like really heavily distorted, what you basically can do as a mastering engineer is just make sure that it doesn't hurt when you turn it up. Like, like probably the mastering engineer probably just cuts some of the harsher frequencies out of like the upper mids, compresses them a bit, and yeah, probably mostly compression and maximization, I imagine. Like maybe some fixes. I don't know, man. I don't know how you would master something like that super objectively. There probably is a lot of de-essing that happens, to be honest with you. Because when you just compress and distort and compress and distort, like you're bringing up like frequencies that your ear does not respond to in a linear distribution. Like the Fletcher-Munson curve is a very specific curve that has biological implications, and it's something that I've had to become more attuned to over time. So something like a de-esser appearing like in the master of a track has become a little bit more common as I've become, used to that and attuned to that. Yeah, I think I've gone through pretty much everything here. I honestly thought that there was like some return track with some reverb on it, but I guess all that's being done in channel. Oh god, I can't be yawning like that if I'm supposed to play some like Dwarf Fortress. And I just wanna play Dwarf Fortress. It's not like anybody's holding me to it. The one person who has been hanging out watching me play has been like, showed up earlier and says, I got stuff to do tonight, so I probably won't be around. So we'll see. Yeah, I used to not care as much. Like, there is something to be said about like just sort of like letting the sound be sound, and if it is like super aggressive and ear hurting, then whatever. Like if it's good music, it'll be heard. But when this is very exploitive of some very like aggressive techniques. Like I have heard artists who just put OTT on everything and it sucks. it really just sucks because you don't get the nuance that comes with like really taming the mid-range in a way that sounds good to your ear. But this sounds fucking sexy to my ears. Like, it sounds good. Like, it sounds like somebody has actually labored over it, because they have. Like, I spent a long time like taking a break from it, coming back, tuning the attack times, you know, like making sure that everything sounded right and that the gain staging was right. Especially like going into the master here. The master is like, once I knew that so the track was mixed, then I mastered it. So that's what V1 was. Then I made some changes, and I affected the gain staging to compensate for the master, which is not something that you should do traditionally. However, like, we've come into an era of extreme electronic music, and sometimes you do that to get those sounds, and it's messy and it's horrible, but like, you know, there's a reason like that this kick is like so loud, because it's meant to absolutely demolish some of the other things that are like happening in the mix. And yeah, it's just part of working with noise, I guess, philosophically. Anti-negative, of course, one of the inspirations for this track, could tell you a lot more about that and go into a lot more depth. You already know that, of course, Chark. I'm just putting it out there for anybody that watches this video in the future. They do some incredible mixing techniques. And yeah, like, a lot of the exploitation of distortion and clipping and that kind of thing is something that a lot of artists have pioneered before. Like, you're going to see a lot of these techniques for like carving room out in your mid-range or your side chaining, or just like kind of like brutalizing the timing of your compressors, all over like drum and bass and trap music and experimental electronic music. So yeah, there's some truth to that, definitely. And when you're just creating, I mean, it helps to know the standards. Like, the reason that I was able to break some of this is because like I knew how it works. But yeah, nobody's like, I don't know. I've been the guy in the studio who's just like, please God, just do it right before, and it just slows down creativity. I mean, it slows me down later when I have to fix it, but you know, yeah, exactly. That's the attitude I expect. And when you're working with, you know, when you are like a noise artist and stuff like that, it's different. It's different. I have to like, I'm mastering this track, so I have to consider as an engineer both the input and the output. So I have to work on both. I know what I know that I'm breaking things, and also that I have to put them back together again at the end. So I'm able to do both within the same project. You know, I don't even know if I could recommend, you know, under normal circumstances, you should really be mastering in like 2-track audio, and, you know, like watching where your transients fall and stuff like that. But yeah, as somebody who also masters their own music, I tend to just do it in chain like this, because I can get away with it, because I've got the whole project here in front of me. So yeah, Inkareen, while you're here, I mean, I suppose that's probably the end of the video, the highlight that I'm going to cut. But if you wanted to see anything that you didn't get to see at the beginning, I can go through it. I honestly, like, I wish I could say that I created this bass from scratch, because it's such a tasty sounding Reese bass. And it's not that I didn't like process it to be tastier, but yeah, you know, I wish I'd made that, but Auntie made it Of course. When you drop like an hour of excellent Reese samples, it's somebody's gonna sample them, hon. Somebody's gonna sample them. Nice, cool. Yeah, the screech is, I mean, God, with the mastering on it, it just hits so hard. Hold on, let's solo it. What I like is that when it's running up that high, did you notice the low end there? Like that's like just being, it's literally just coming from the distortion. It's like the like low rumbles, like that 2 hertz rumble that's like in the sample because it's like unmanipulated, and then because I'm putting it up like 5 octaves, it's just like the body of this like synth. Fuck. I love it so much. So yeah, baby. Inkareen, honey baby boy. Sorry. You should just report the stream, please. Oh, what is this? I didn't go through this, did I? I was just looking through some of these. I knew there was something that I missed. So there's this this little sound in here. Holy shit, let's turn this off. That sound. Also something that I found in a sample pack. I thought that I had maybe made this, but just like EQ'd and compressed. Noah said he thought it might have sounded like the Wilhelm scream or something, which I never thought about, but it does kind of sound like that. Dude, the thing is that the sub, if you turn the sidechain off, the sub is pushed up, is louder than everything. The sub actually clips the track. But with all that insane sidechain, it's just like it just keeps getting pushed back down. Because it's sidechained the entire drum kit. But the sub is actually the only thing that triggers this limiter down here. So gross, so delicious. All right, well that is Inkareen.